Okay, we got my brother back in the building. I have so much admiration and respect for this man. I saw this man's name come on the schedule and I said, this is gonna be a good one. Please welcome back to VladTV, American talk show host, author, entrepreneur, Mr. Tavis Smiley. Tavis, what up?
Shawn Prez, how are you, sir?
I'm good. It is always my pleasure speaking to you on air and off.
The pleasure is mine. Let me just tell you a little secret. When VladTV reached out to me to ask me to appear on the network again, I was honored to say yes. Had a great time the last time I was here. So I said yes under one condition. I said, I will only talk to Shawn Prez. If you get Shawn Prez to talk to me, then I will come back to VladTV. So somebody got the message. So I'm glad they tapped you to be the interlocutor for this conversation. Now, I may regret this in 2 hours, but at the moment at least, I'm glad that they asked you to do it, brother.
And I'm glad you asked them to have me do it. Shout to my man Vlad, though.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, Tavis, it's so much going on in the world right now. We are in election season, election 2024 for the highest office in the country. Before we get into that, you got a lot going on in your personal life. You're about to release new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later. Comes out on August 27th?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. I really had to think about where I wanted to start this interview because there's so much going on in the world. And I just figured we go touch on the book because it expands into everything going on in the world right now as we know it, especially as pertains to Black Americans, African Americans. I want to start by reading the introduction to the book. And thank you so much for sending me an advance copy. First paragraph says, when we originally released The Covenant with Black America, it shocked the publishing world by climbing to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and staying there for multiple weeks. It was the first book by a Black publisher to ever achieve #1 status on the New York Times bestseller list. I know it shocked the world, but did it shock you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It did. I figured we had something special here. We put a lot of time and effort into this. And so I figured we had something that would resonate with our people. But I've written now, 25 books. This book is my 25th. And whenever you get on the New York Times bestseller list, it's a beautiful thing. When you shoot to #1, I've been there with a couple of different books. It's a more amazing thing. But you can't really predict these things. I mean, let's face it, I am not John Grisham. I am not Toni Morrison. I am not, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not, Barack Obama or Michelle Obama or Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton. I'm not a notable of that stature. So you never know how your book will fare. But I figured we had something special, in part because I knew the backstory to the book. And the backstory very simply is this. In 2000, George Bush essentially stole the election thanks to the Supreme Court from Al Gore. I'm still mad at Al Gore all these years later, and I say mad put that in air quotes, mad, because there were counties in Florida that should have been recounted, other counties that were not. Al Gore, for those who were around then, implored Jesse Jackson to stay out of Florida. He didn't want race to be on this effort. He didn't want race to be an issue, even if he pulled this out. He didn't want race to be a factor, which is interesting because a Black woman named Donna Brazile was running his campaign. Let me fast forward right quick and I'll go back. Contrast Al Gore asking Black folk to stand down. We got this. We'll handle this. Clearly he was wrong, but he asked Black folk to stand down versus Joe Biden a couple of decades later, who embraced Black people. Everybody knows that Joe Biden wouldn't be president without for those Black folk in South Carolina, James Clyburn, and namely all those Black women in South Carolina. And once South Carolina saved the day for Joe Biden, the rest of us Negroes lined on up, and Joe Biden ends up becoming the president. And on a number of things, he kept his word. Not as progressive as I would want him to have been in this first and apparently only term as president, but he kept his word with KBJ on the Supreme Court. And before that, Kamala Harris as his running mate. You and I discussed before, I don't get impressed by black faces in high places. Symbolism has its place, but for me, substance matters more. The only point I'm making is the contrast between how Al Gore wanted to give Negroes the Heisman when it came to the recount versus Joe Biden embracing black people and wrapping himself in black people and giving us Juneteenth as the holiday when had nobody even asked for it. That's how much he wanted to thank Negroes for what they did for him. So back to the covenant. In 2000, Al Gore loses the election. George W. Bush steals the election with the help of the Supreme Court. That's in 2000. In 2001, the unthinkable happens, 9/11. You obviously are from New York. You were there. The world saw what happened on that horrific day. But that happens in 2001. So black folk are disenfranchised in 2000, born of the election. Then 2001 happens. Our good white brothers and sisters came to understand what it feels like to be a black person every day, unprotected, out in the open, unsafe, unsecure. That's what it means to be black every day in this country. So Cornel West says the whole nation got niggerized on 9/11. That's in 2001. Fast forward to 2004, after all that drama, George Bush gets reelected in 2004. And we came together at the State of the Black Union and said then, this will never happen again. Will never happen again. What were we talking about? We made it clear in 2004 that once we got to 2008, we were going to have a plan. We were not going to get caught out there with another candidate like George Bush just running the table and getting elected as president. So we wanted to have an agenda, a plan. We started talking about that, writing it down, laying it out in 2004. Watch this. As we're writing the book in 2005, that same George Bush leaves black folk to die on rooftops in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And at that point, we said, absolutely, it's time to move on this book we've been writing called The Covenant with Black America. We finished the book. We put it out in 2006, so it was actually published again in 2006, but we wrote the book, started writing it in 2004, hence the 20th anniversary. So that's a long way of answering your question. Did I know it'd be a #1 bestseller? Absolutely not. But I knew that the backstory, the trajectory that I just laid out for you meant that black folk were hungry for something, especially after Hurricane Katrina. We needed an agenda to rally around to make sure that in 2008, we could put somebody in the White House that would care about the things that matter to us so that when Barack Obama shows up in 2007, Black America was ready. You recall that campaign, his campaign slogan, fired up, ready to go, fired up, ready to go. Well, what fired these black people up and got them ready to go was the covenant that had already come out and sold millions of copies. And black folk were ready for something majestic. In our lives, there's what we call chronos and kairos. Chronos is the passage of time. Kairos is a moment in time. And so we've been living our chronos lives, but that kairos moment where Obama shows up at the right time, at the right place, the book has come out, millions of copies have been sold. Black folk are ready to go. And Barack Obama ends up being our choice. The rest, as they say, is history. But the backstory to the book let me know that black folk, again, were ready. They were hungry. They had had enough. And so I thought the book would do well, but no idea it jumped to #1 on the list.
Well, congratulations. I love the name of the book, The Covenant with Black America.
Yeah.
Where'd you come up with the title?
It's a great question, as always. Here you go again, asking another 2 hours of great questions here. I got to get myself ready for these questions you firing at me. We were talking about this live during the State of the Black Union. As you know, and as many in your audience know, every year for a dozen years in February, Black History Month, I would convene what we call the State of the Black Union. We call it SOBU. And every year we'd feature these, just a stage full of black thinkers and thought leaders and opinion makers and influencers, the best and brightest, frankly, in Black America. We'd assemble in a particular city on a stage, live on C-SPAN all day. Black folk couldn't turn us off. For that matter, white America would watch and they couldn't turn us off. A panel in the morning of a dozen people, take a lunch break, another panel in the afternoon, another dozen people. So every year, 24 people representing the best and brightest of Black America. As you may know now, there's a clip circulating all over America. Millions of folk have seen this clip of Kamala Harris on stage at the State of the Black Union. And
Yes.
so with humility, I'm proud to say that we were the first ones to put her out there on a national platform for Black folk to see, a long time ago, before anybody had ever heard of Kamala Harris, when she was just becoming the DA basically in the city of San Francisco. So every year we would do these conversations. And at one of these conversations on national television, we were talking about, we were already working on the book. And the question was, what are we going to call the book? And initially I proposed calling it The Contract with Black America. And Joseph Lowry, now the late great Joseph Lowry, head of SCLC, lieutenant of Dr. King, gave the benediction at Obama's inauguration the first time around. That Joe Lowry suggested, no. We can't call it a contract. We have to call it a covenant with our people, a commitment, a promise to our people. So Joe Lowry raised this issue of covenant. Dr. West comes behind him, and Dr. West writes in this book about why it is called a covenant and not a contract. He lays into that. Then Minister Farrakhan, the brother minister, he sounds off on why a covenant is better than a contract. And all these clips have been seen millions of times on YouTube. But it was those three persons come to mind immediately who opined on why it should not be called a contract with, but a covenant with our people. And that's how the name came to be. Obviously, I know a good idea when I hear one. And when Joseph Lowry and the brother minister and Cornel West tell you we going this way, guess what, Prez? We going this way.
We going this way.
And that's what happened.
Beautiful story. And that is, it's such a powerful, powerful word. I mean, it harkens back to the Bible. When I hear the covenant,
that's right.
It's so strong and powerful. I love that name. And even as you were speaking about being early with Kamala Harris, I believe, are you talking about, because this is somewhere 2005, 2006, you had on a panel of emerging leaders?
That's right.
Is that what you're talking? Yeah.
That's the panel.
I remember that.
Yeah. And there's a clip that's gone viral. It's everywhere now, where she's talking about crime and punishment for Black people, law and order for Black people. And so the clip is circulating now like crazy because people are raising questions about her record as DA in San Francisco.
Yes. About
her record as Attorney General in California. All kinds of questions being raised. Folk have concerns about that. And so that clip has gone viral because she was on the panel that day talking about those very issues all those years ago. And so that's why it's become such a hot viral clip right about now.
Okay, so you chose to revisit this book 20 years later. What are some of the most significant we've obviously had the first Black president in 2008, as you mentioned. Outside of that, what are some of the most significant changes that you've observed, for better or for worse, within the African-American community over the past 20 years?
Let me answer, brilliant question. Let me answer it this way. One of the things that troubles me most about our community, and it's not just a statement about our community, it's a much larger statement about the country in which we live. This experiment in democracy. I don't call America a democracy because we're not quite there yet. We have a, how might I put it? We have a Madisonian framework for democracy, but we've not quite achieved democracy as yet. If I had the time, I could even debate you on whether or not, in fact, we are a plutocracy and oligarchy, but I call it an experiment in democracy. And so one of the things that troubles me about this experiment in democracy that we live inside of is that Black people have forever, historically, perennially, achieved at the individual level. But as a collective, we remain and continue to be held back. And so I could point to you, if I wanted to answer your question in this vein, in this way, in this frame, I could give you a lot of examples of things that we've done over the last 20 years that I think are worth celebrating. I just mentioned KBJ. You just mentioned Barack Obama. We just mentioned Kamala Harris. I could do this all day long in terms of significant achievements by African-American individuals. But the saddest part, if I can sort of flip your question, the saddest part about going through the rewriting process, or the not rewriting, it's a new text with new essays, but just revisiting is the word I was looking for. Revisiting this 20 years later, the saddest part, Prez, is that black people, 2 decades later, still lag far behind in every single leading economic indicator category. Let me say that again. There is not a single economic category in which black folk do not still, 2 decades after the covenant went to number 1 on the Times list, not a single category where we still do not still lag far behind. That is depressing. It is sobering. It is disappointing. It is untenable. It's unthinkable. And yet that is our reality. So while I could focus our attention on the things that we've done well, and I believe that progress ought to be celebrated, I am burdened by the fact that in so many ways, the progress we have made has been slow to bleak. And that's what I hope will be, again, sobering about the book when people get a chance to read it and go through each of the 10 covenants that were in the original book, with new essays by younger thinkers, folk who've lived some life over the last 20 years. There are only 2 essays in the book, 2 essayists, I should say, 2 writers who wrote in the original book. So Mark Morial at the Urban League wrote the essay on economic empowerment, economic justice 20 years ago. And I invited Mark Morial, who's still now running the Urban League 20 years later, to write that essay 20 years later. It's interesting to get his take on what he wrote 20 years ago and what he has to say now. And on the chapter about black folk and technology, Tyrone Taborn wrote the original essay 20 years ago. I invited him once again to write the essay 20 years later about what he's seen as changes or not, growth or not in the tech space. And the short takeaway on that is that we've made great strides in tech, and yet we are still, we're still in the consumer category, much more than we are in the content creator category. Still too many consumers, not enough creators. We got to keep working at that. So again, no, there's no question that we've made progress. The question is why we still lag behind in all of these categories. And I said to somebody the other day, Prez, which I think you'll appreciate, you ask the right question, you get the right answer. You ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer.
Correct.
My point is simply this. If the question is, are we better off now than we were 20 years ago? In some ways, the answer to that question might be yes. But that ain't the question. The question is not, are we better now than we were then? The question is, how do black folk today in real time stack up against white folk today in real time? That's the question. Not then versus now, but now versus now. Us versus them right now. When you ask that question, you get a very different answer. And so economically speaking, black folk are still, hate to say this, we are still 3/5 of a person. You recall when our founding documents were written, in our founding documents, those documents were pro-slavery documents when they were written. We were 3/5 then of a person, and now economically speaking, we are still 3/5 of a person. So there's a lot of work to be done, and obviously I always remain hopeful, not optimistic, but I'm always hopeful. But it was distressing in some ways writing this book 20 years later, seeing what we've done, but also coming to terms with what we've not been able to accomplish over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, you know, I want to read back something you wrote in the book, and it really goes to everything you just spoke about. It says, the most distressing part of compiling and editing this 20th anniversary edition of the text was looking at the data and realizing that so little has changed when it comes to the condition of the black community, the beloved community, to quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep.
That's powerful in and of itself. When you really go to the raw data and say, very little's changed.
Yeah.
The advancements that we thought we made, we really haven't.
No. And the part that's troubling about that for me in this particular moment in late modernity, in this moment in American history, the part that concerns me about that is simply this, Prez. Every time America is in trouble, every time her back is against the wall, who do they call? as the song says, who you gonna call?
They call the African American community.
Exactly. The answer ain't Ghostbusters. You ain't calling Ghostbusters. You calling black folk. Every time America is in trouble, black folk come to the rescue. We are the cavalry. Let me convince you of this. In every single war this country has ever fought, when they got in trouble and it appeared that they might not win this war, might not pull it out, who did they call? Black folk. I mean, you just walk back through history. The Civil War was fought over the institution of slavery. Nikki Haley didn't want to acknowledge that, or perhaps had forgotten that when she was running for president on the Republican ticket. She gave the wrong answer when asked that question. No, Miss Haley, the Civil War was fought over the institution of slavery and whether or not it would continue. And when the Union got into trouble trying to fight the Confederacy, who did they call? Black folk.
Yep.
That's what the movie Glory with Denzel Washington is all about.
Correct.
They called in these black folk to help save the war. That's the Civil War. World War I, World War II, when we're trying to save the world against Hitler, who do they call? The Tuskegee Airmen to come in and fly all those flights, to escort those planes. Tuskegee Airmen never lost a single plane. And after we helped save the world from Hitler and his particular view, black soldiers have to sit in the back of the train behind, not in front of, in the back of the train behind Nazi war criminals coming out of Europe. That's how they treated us, what they thought of us after we'd helped them save the world. In every war we've ever fought, we have shown up. And politically, it's no different. I've told this joke many times, and in some ways it may be funny, maybe other ways it's not. But if you look at cities all across the country, whenever these cities got in so much trouble, who they call? Black mayors. They called Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. They called Coleman Young in Detroit. They called, after the Watts riots, they called Tom Bradley in Los Angeles. They called Harold Washington in Chicago. They called David Dinkins in New York. I can do this all. They called Carl Stokes in Cleveland. I can do this all day long. When these cities get in trouble, they call, somebody get the Negroes. Somebody get them Negroes in here. So they call us when they're in trouble. The same could be said at the presidential level. I'm glad that Barack Obama goes down in history as the first African-American president. But recall the condition of our country at that time. And Barack Obama
steps in,
comes to the rescue.
There you go.
Look at where we are right now, Prez. We're trying to save this experiment in democracy from the existential threat that is Donald Trump. And who they calling on? Kamala Harris.
All black women.
And all these black women.
And all
these black
women,
people
all
to come.
black queens.
That's it. Come save us again. So my point is that it troubles me to see the ways in which we still lag far behind in all these vitally important categories, and yet we are the ones at our best, and I ain't saying black folk are perfect, but at our best, we're the ones who always come to the rescue of this democracy, and those two things are just hard to square. The ways in which we are so maltreated still by this republic, by this country, it's hard to juxtapose that against the reality of us always coming to the rescue of this democracy. I said the other day very quickly that when black folk, as we were discussing earlier in South Carolina, when those black folk came to Joe Biden's rescue in South Carolina, they didn't just save his campaign, they saved the democracy.
There you go.
Because had we not shown up then, Donald Trump might have won then. And the threat that we think we're facing now, we would have been facing then. So that the point is that we always come to the rescue when they call us, and trying to square that with the ways in which we're making progress at a snail's pace is a bitter pill that's always hard for me to swallow.
You know, you bring up Donald Trump and Biden. I want to step back 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
First presidential debate between President Biden, former President Trump, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Number one, did you watch that debate in real time? And number two, what was your thoughts?
I did watch it in real time, number one. Number two, it was clear to me that the president had a horrible night. And my first question, because I'm always fascinated by the backstory, I see the story in real time as everybody else saw it. My questions were the backstory. I wanted to know, was he prepared for this? Was he overprepared? Is there something wrong with him? Is he sick? I mean, I wanted to know, like, what led to that moment. I had the same kinds of questions when Barack Obama debated Mitt Romney. In that first debate, Mitt Romney cleaned his clock.
Correct.
Obama got rocked in that first debate with Mitt Romney. And I wanted to know, like, what led to such a poor performance? So I wasn't ready in that moment, as everybody else did, to have a meltdown and disqualify Joe Biden. I wanted to understand what the backstory was. But it did draw my attention to his frailty. And in the days thereafter, the more I saw him, the more I realized that physically he wasn't up to the task. I'm not one to have gone in on his mental acuity, his cognitive abilities. That wasn't the lane that I was in. I just realized that physically, at his age and his condition, he did not have what it took to campaign vigorously, which is what one has to do if one is going to win this election. So for me, it wasn't even about his mental acuity. It was that the brother just doesn't have the energy it's going to take to pull this thing off. And so I realized that even more so in the days following the debate.
Okay, because I saw something that was unprecedented at the time. Media, celebrities, the people, social media were all calling for this man to step aside. I don't think I've ever seen a sitting president, no matter what he's done, be asked by the nation at large to pull over, take a seat, and let somebody else drive this thing. Were you shocked at the public outcry? You know, and it was coming from the highest levels. Working behind the scenes, you had people like Nancy Pelosi that were having these hard talks. Hakeem Jeffries were having these difficult talks with the president. It had become clear that there was no path forward for Biden. Did that shock you? Because I've never seen this in my lifetime.
I tell you what did not shock me. What did not shock me, and I so said on my national radio program, I said then, and I will say now, that in that moment, Democrats showed me once again how spineless they are, how milquetoast they are, how spaghetti back they are, the traitors that they can be. Democrats showed me in that moment how they eat their own. And I wasn't having it. And I went in on Democrats on my radio program for this particular reason or reasons. Number one, when did y'all figure out Joe Biden was old? Did you just not realize that the guy was old? He was old when you nominated him 4 years ago. He was old then. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if you nominate somebody at 77, they're going to be 81 when that term is over. Mm-hmm. So he was old when you nominated him. Y'all didn't realize that? That's number one. Number two, Joe Biden talked about being a transition candidate when you gave him the nomination. So why didn't y'all make him stay true to his promise to be a transition president? No, what you let him do was to renege on his promise to be a transition president. So that Joe Biden now is a renegger. He's a renegger. he reneged on his commitment to be a transition president, right? And the Democrats let him get away with it. Thirdly, if you thought he was too old then, why didn't you primary him? Nobody stood up to primary Joe Biden. No Democrat, no major Democrat stood up to primary him. Ted Kennedy did that against Jimmy Carter. It was a bloodletting. Jimmy Carter beat Ted Kennedy down, but Ted Kennedy at least put himself out there because he knew that Jimmy Carter was in some trouble. All right. Democrats put nobody up to run against Joe Biden. Either they knew he was old, they knew he promised to be a transition candidate, transition president, and they let him get away with it, changing his mind. Nobody says nothing. The guy runs, and all y'all Democrats vote for him. Now he's your nominee. And now all of a sudden, you want to turn on this man. I thought it was unfair to Joe Biden. It was unfair. It was beneath Democrats. I think the president deserved better. And none of that is to say that I believe he's the right candidate at the right time. I'm talking about the Democrats and the way they screwed this up. And then he has a meltdown in this debate, and everybody's pulling out their hair. When I watched CNN, at one point, I turned the channel to make sure I wasn't watching Fox. Because these Democrats, these progressives, they were having a heart attack. My boy Van Jones
crying
on CNN, crying again. There's Van crying. And David Axelrod, Obama's campaign manager, all the Democrats were going in because he'd had this horrible performance. But my thing was, none of y'all saw this coming. Nobody saw it coming. And then the bloodletting begins. The bedwetting begins. Everybody wants to turn on him. And the irony is this. All the folk who helped him become president are the same Democrats who then turned on Joe Biden quicker than right now and sooner than at once. The speed with which they turned on him, I repeat, quicker than right now, sooner than at once, they turned on Joe Biden as if all of a sudden they had a revelation. Had a revelation all of a sudden. And then they all bum rushed the stage where Joe Biden is standing, metaphorically. They bum rushed the stage. They pushed the old man off the stage. He on the ground trying to get up. Y'all done pushed him off the stage. And then you say, he's a great president. And we want to thank him. We want to thank him for his wonderful years of service to the nation. Joe Biden is a great American. He's the greatest president since FDR. You get all this stuff after they push him off the stage. So Democrats did this to themselves. They turned what was a bad debate into a nightmare for weeks until the president finally gets bullied. And for a party that's always talking about bullying, don't get me started, Prez, don't get me started. We talk about bullying kids. We talk about bullying transgender. We talk about bullying all the time. Joe Biden got bullied by a bunch of Democrats. That's the truth. And the minute he's on the ground, feeble, trying to get up, then here come all these accolades about what a great president he is, what a great man he is, and we want to thank him for standing down. He didn't stand down. Y'all pushed him down. He did not stand down. He got pushed down. And so it would be laughable if it weren't so serious. But Democrats did Joe Biden in, and I hope that in the years to come, Democrats will have more foresight, more insight, not be so late trying to figure stuff out that puts Kamala Harris in a very difficult position. She got a very short window. She only had 2 weeks. Only had 2 weeks to do the vetting on her running mate. So she got a very short window to try to do the impossible. If she beats Donald Trump, this race, I believe, is still hers to lose. If she beats him, it'll be the miracle of all miracles. But I'll tell you this, if anybody can do it, a black woman can do it. If anybody can pull off a miracle like this, always bet on black. And if she's a woman, bet twice. Always bet on black. But to put her in this position in some ways is unfair, but I digress.
You just said, you just preached the gospel, brother. You sound like me talking to my friends on the phone arguing because we all said the same thing.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't know this man was old. Mm-hmm. Y'all had no idea up into that night where the world saw him. This man getting old. Mm-hmm. He can't do this job no more. Mm-hmm. You just preach the gospel right there. Okay, whoa. And I love what you said, because once they knocked him down, first they tried to use the Jedi mind trick on good
exactly.
old Joe. He'd do the right thing. He's a patriot.
That's
like
it.
Joe loves his country. He gonna do the right thing.
That's it. It was funny to watch, man, because you're seeing this in real time. Y'all bully him, you beat him up, you knock him down, then you thank him for leaving the stage. Joe Biden's like, I didn't leave the stage. Y'all pushed me off. But I digress.
Oh man. Okay. I think we can all agree it was a horrendous outing. The Democrats play so different than the Republicans, because if that had been Trump, before I move this thing on, if that had been Trump, I can guarantee you they would have said Trump had a bad night, and they would have started talking about what's ahead of him.
Yeah.
America would have forgot about that bad outing within 48 hours. Trump would not have acknowledged it. He would not have said anything in any way to make you think he had a bad outing, and he'd have just kept moving forward. So it's just amazing to me how everybody, as you just said, all of the Democrats turned against this man as though it was the end of the world, and they didn't see that this was at least a possibility.
Yeah, and the thing is, to your point, not that you need my help to shore it up even more, but let me just add on to it. What you just said is not speculation. It's not speculation. One does not need to speculate. One just needs to look at the facts that are in front of us. Look at how the Republicans have rallied around Donald Trump with all the drama, all the convictions, all the allegations, all the cases, all the stolen documents, all, and they have rallied around him like nobody's business. They rallied around him in the way that we saw at the Republican convention, the way we see on the campaign trail. And then after he survived that assassination attempt, now he's some sort of messianic figure. The devil showed up, tried to take him down, but God saved him. Ha! And God brought him back. Ha! And he's God's man of the hour. Ha! So now they've embraced him as to be some sort of messianic figure. So it's gotten even worse. The sycophants are even more sycophantish after the assassination than they were before. So this is not speculation. Look at how Republicans have rallied around him, and look at how they bullied the Democrats, that is, bullied Joe Biden. So it's not speculation. The facts are right there in front of you. You see it for yourself.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter with the conviction. The guy running for president on the Republican side is a convicted felon at this point. Mm-hmm. Like, really think about some of this. Yeah. And I'm sure you saw the RNC right after the assassination attempt. People act like they don't see that this man's wife can't stand him. Mm-hmm. Can't stand the man. She met him on stage, gave him a fake kiss. No matter what happens, they understand the mission.
That's right.
The mission is get him back in office. We don't care about him sleeping with a porn star. We don't care about hush money convictions. We don't care. What we care about is getting him back in office and making America great again. Mm-hmm. Simple as that.
That's it.
Okay. To your point earlier, when crap hits the fan, what does America do? They call on black people. Mm-hmm. Hence, our Democratic nominee for president, Kamala Harris. Biden steps down, endorses the first female vice president in the U.S. Now she is the Democratic presidential nominee. How do you think that this plays out for her? She has just under 90 days to get the job done. She's starting out the gate like a rocket.
Oh, yeah.
She has reinvigorated this base. How do you see the next 90 days going?
I should confess up front that as an unapologetic progressive, if there were an open primary Kamala might not have been my first choice. But I hasten to add that if the choice is her or Donald Trump, and I do not believe that this is a binary election. I remind people all the time that Cornel West is running, Jill Stein, there are others who are running. It's not a binary choice because there's some folk who see that America being a plutocracy, America being an oligarchy, not a democracy, requires and demands something different in this moment. So I ain't mad at folk. Cornel West is my friend. I make no mistakes about that. My friend and my brother. I'm not mad at folk who are looking at alternative options in this race. So as a progressive, she would not have been my first choice, and I admit that, I acknowledge that. Having said that, I love the enthusiasm around her. Ain't nobody hating on that, number one. Number two, if the choice is her or Donald Trump, well, that's not really a choice for me, if that's what it boils down to. But I do stand by what I said earlier. She is in a very difficult position because Democrats allowed this mess to happen. You pick a sister, and now you want her to do the impossible, to do the unthinkable. And so it's going to be tough. As I said earlier, I still believe this race is Donald Trump's to lose. There's no doubt in my mind that she's going to wallop him in the popular vote, not unlike Hillary Clinton. She's going to smash him in the popular vote, but as you know, that ain't the one that counts.
There you go.
We could have a whole conversation about the Electoral College. I'm sick of it. I've been sick of it. We ought to do away with it. It may have been a decent idea then. It outlived its usefulness decades ago. If this is a democracy, then the person with the most votes ought to be the president.
Correct.
Very simple. So I have issues with the Electoral College, but that's the way we select the president. And at the moment, I don't see how she does it on the electoral map, even though she does it with the popular vote. Now, I've been living long enough at this point. You see the gray hair in my hair now. I've lived long enough to know that a day is a lifetime in politics, right? So this thing is going to change 1,000 times between now and November. The momentum that she has, the money that she's raising, the enthusiasm I see generated, anything could happen. It's going to be a close race either way. So I'm not going to counter out. As I said, I always bet on black, but this is a serious, serious uphill climb. David Axelrod, who I mentioned earlier, who ran Obama's campaign, said the other day, got in some trouble for saying it, but he defined what he sees happening right now in Kamala world as irrational exuberance. That's his phrase, irrational exuberance. That this excitement, enthusiasm is good. He wasn't trying to tamp it down, but he wanted to sober people and say Donald Trump is still leading. He's still winning on the electoral map. And this enthusiasm had better translate into something else. And the question is whether or not she can sustain this enthusiasm and whether or not she can do some damage on the Electoral College map. And the jury on that, frankly, is still out.
So I'll ask you a very pointed question. Donald Trump won on Make America Great Again. He's running on Make America Great Once Again. And that harkens back to a time when, because America ain't never been great for black folks.
Never.
Let's just call that what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think this America, number one, is ready for a woman to be the leader of the free world, let alone a black woman to take that office?
That is the question, Prez. And the short answer and the honest answer is, I don't know. I just don't know. Here's what I do know. What I do know is that she's going to need a massive turnout of black voters to make this competitive. What I do know is that she needs to siphon off a whole lot of white women to make this happen. She is not going to do remarkably or demonstrably well with white males. And here's my concern. Historically, white women have always voted like white men, like their husbands, like their fathers, etc. White women's votes mirror those of white men. And that's the big question for me. The $100,000 question is, what are white women going to do? I ask that question routinely on my national radio show, talking to all kinds of people, including white women. I'm always asking white women, are y'all going to show up? And it was nice to see white women for Harris on that big Zoom call and all the money they raised. That was nice. But at the end of the day, when you walk in that polling booth and you close the curtain, or if you vote early, however you vote, and can't nobody see what you're doing at your kitchen table, do white women show up for Kamala Harris? And for me, the jury again is still out on that question. So can she do it? I don't know. Is America ready for it? I don't know. What I do know is that you can't win it if you ain't in it. And so she's in the race. She's raising money. The enthusiasm levels are up. We shall see. But fundamentally, what we're going to be dissecting the day after was how robust was the black turnout. And Sade sang that beautiful song, never as good as the first time. Somebody else said you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Somebody else said, lightning only strikes once. So it's going to be interesting to see if she mirrors historically what Obama did as the first in 2008. Again, I don't know if the level of enthusiasm reaches that sort of fever pitch as it did for Obama in 2008, because this ain't the first time. It is as a woman, no question about it. But for black people, this is not the first time per se. So I don't know how that all shakes out. But what I'm keeping my eye on is, again, black turnout, which has to be very robust, and whether or not these white women are going to show up. And on that question, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know that we live in an America where, you're speaking about white women. I'm thinking about white men.
Yeah.
Republican, Democrat, Independent. Is a white man who goes to work, pays his taxes, lives in the suburbs, ready to turn on his television and see a black woman as commander-in-chief. That's, and to your point, I don't care what you're registered as.
Yeah.
No one knows what you do when you get into that booth and close that curtain.
That's right.
And it's as simple as that. I love the way the party has been awakened. I love the fact that all of a sudden this actually seems like a dogfight. I love the fact that Kamala's holding no punches. She's going straight for the jugular. But I don't know that it's enough. And I also don't know that it's enough time.
I tell you,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I tell you what does concern me. And I just said to some friends of mine the other night at dinner that I've pushed Kamala Harris much higher up on my prayer list. She like right near the tippy top now on my prayer list. Because when this debate with her and Donald Trump does happen, I have grave concerns about the way that is seen by America writ large. And in this instance, I want to turn back to your point about whether or not white males are prepared to see a black woman as commander-in-chief. Both she and Donald Trump are going to be in a very, very precarious situation, Prez, when they're side by side on stage. As a white male, particularly with his background of drama and maltreating women, Donald Trump has got to be concerned about how he comes across up against this woman. He didn't have that concern against Joe Biden. You could pummel Joe Biden, and it is what it is. Or Biden could pummel him. Two white men going at it, we're used to that, no big deal. But when you're a white male, and now you're standing next to a woman and a black woman, there are any number of things that he could say or do that would get him in a whole lot of trouble. Remember how he walked around the stage basically stalking Hillary when he debated Hillary? You can't do that to a black woman. And there's certain things that he shouldn't say, certain phraseologies he ought to be concerned about. So Donald Trump's going to be in a precarious situation debating a black woman. But the same is true for Kamala. Now I'm back to your point, Prez. You're debating a white man. You are a black woman debating a white man in America. And I keep telling all my friends who think that because she's a prosecutor, she's going to pummel the felon, put down the crack pipe. Donald Trump has beat up a whole lot of prosecutors in his career.
That's right.
Donald Trump went off on the judge in Manhattan in the courtroom to his face. I didn't say prosecutor, I said judge. Kamala Harris is not going to roll Donald Trump. Sorry, y'all, it's not going to happen. He ain't going to get rolled. And just because she's a prosecutor, which, by the way, she hadn't done in years, doesn't mean that the prosecutor's going to just pummel the felon. I don't see that happening. But both of them are going to be in a very, very difficult frame for how they do this awkward dance with each other. And I would simply suggest this. If I'm Kamala Harris, if I'm Team Harris, if I'm the Harris-Walz campaign, I'm spending a lot of time talking to psychologists, people who watch the culture, who study human behavior. I'm talking to them to make sure that my cues are right. We tend to think of debate preparation as you in there debating somebody in your team who's playing your opponent. So there's some white man that Kamala is going to be debating with in preparation to get ready for Donald Trump. I can assure you of that. Donald Trump, if he's smart, will find some black woman in his camp, some black woman somewhere that he can debate to prepare him to deal with debating Kamala Harris. But if that's all they do, somebody's going to be in trouble. Again, if I'm Kamala Harris, I'm spending a lot of time talking to psychologists about the psyche of the American people, the psyche of white men, the psyche of white women, and the things that you want to do and don't want to do in that debate. I'll leave that where it is, but it's going to be an interesting and awkward dance when this tete-a-tete finally happens. And I hope that they're smart enough to do the research to make sure that they're in the right frame, Prez, talking now about the Harris people when they step on that. I mean, she steps on that stage. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about it being an interesting dance. When they get on the stage, I think it's going to be an interesting dance with her moving forward in this campaign. And what I mean by that is you brought up Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Barack Obama, and again, times have changed. That was 2008.
Yeah.
You know, we're now 16 years later, 2024. Barack, he's clearly a black man, but he never leaned into being black.
Mm-hmm.
He never put that out. Actually, it almost felt in real time as though he wanted to stay away from.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all can see I'm a black man.
Mm-hmm.
You see I got that big, beautiful black woman behind me. I got black kids. But you almost couldn't get him to embrace and say it out loud. I'm watching Kamala run a very different campaign. It's early, but she's being attacked for not being black enough. And because of that, she's leaning all the way into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's doing rallies. She is an Alpha Kappa Alpha. Shouts to the AKAs. Went to Howard. She's making sure that she is loud and proud about the fact that I'm a black woman.
She got Megan twerking on stage with her.
Do you got Megan twerking on stage at a rally? The Stallion showed up.
Yeah, the Stallion is twerking on stage. Work that twerk.
But I just going in line with our conversation, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right play.
Yeah.
I hope it is, because at the end of the day, if I haven't learned anything about Trump, anything from Trump, and if this world, the country, that dude is unapologetically who he is.
Yeah.
He ain't making no concessions for you.
Yeah.
He ain't making no concessions for me. Trump, I don't care where he is, he's going to be Trump, and he going to leave it there.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, Kamala got to give the world Kamala, for better or for worse, because that's what people are going to buy into.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you happen to catch Trump at the National Association for Black Journalists last week?
Yeah, I figured that might be on your list of topics. Yes, I did catch him. It was happening while I was live on the air. So we were talking about it in real time. And then the next day, I had a round table of black journalists on my radio program, my national show, to talk about it. It was disappointing in a lot of ways. What we discussed on my show and what I think expresses my true sentiment about it is the following. We know who Donald Trump is. You just said earlier, Donald Trump is as advertised. There was nothing that Donald Trump did or said on that stage that day that surprised me at all. Not a single thing. I mean, nothing. Nothing about him going in on them for starting late, trying to dog them about their equipment not working. Even his birtherism attack on Kamala, is she really black? He did that to Obama before he even ran for president. So this is birtherism 2.0, right? So there's nothing that Donald Trump said or did that day that surprised me. What disappointed me is that black folk weren't ready. I did not believe that NABJ was at its best that day, and it did not put us as black folk in our best light, his attack and his bad boy behavior notwithstanding. And so just 2 or 3 quick examples of what I mean by that. Number one, for all the stories that we keep reading, Prez, about Donald Trump working hard to siphon off a significant slice of black male voters, not hating on sisters, but there should have been a brother on that stage. One of those 3 persons questioning Donald Trump should have been a black male, if for no other reason than to give a brother a chance to query him and advance the notion that black men are not in his pocket. And so the NABJ missed a huge opportunity to not make one of those 3 interlocutors a black male. I stand by that. I will not apologize for it. I think you can say that without demonizing black women. That's not my point. But there should have been a brother on that stage. I was disappointed, number one. Number two, there should have been a veteran on that stage. I thought there was a little ageism at play. There are a lot of folk in NABJ who are sort of gray hair now, but there's a lot of wisdom that they have, a lot of experience they have. And I think that a veteran on that stage could have handled him a little bit better than he was handled. So my first thing was there was no black male. I didn't like that. There was no veteran on the stage. I didn't like that. This is an organization called the National Association of Black Journalists. Let me pose the question that I posed to my panel. And it may get me in some trouble, but my panel understood the question on my show, and we had a nice, robust conversation about it. Imagine Barack Obama in 2008, as we just discussed earlier, in a room full of thousands of white journalists, and him being treated or maltreated in that way. All the hissing, all the booing, all the laughing in his face. If a room of white journalists had done that to Barack Obama, we'd be up in arms. Let me be very clear. I understand how black folk writ large feel about Donald Trump. I'm on the same page with you. But when you are an organization and the word journalism or journalist is in your title, there is a decorum that I think that accompanies that. And when that decorum doesn't accompany that, then people see us through a different lens. They see us through a different prism. And I'm not denigrating anybody in that room. I'm not casting aspersion on everybody in the room. I'm not painting with a broad brush, because I'm sure not everybody in that room behaved in that way. But I just thought it was beneath us. It was not us at our best in that particular moment. I've had some tough interviews in my career, as have any number of other black journalists. Lester Holt, in his interview recently with President Biden in the White House, President Biden pushed back on Lester really hard in that interview. But Lester's a pro, and Lester behaved like a pro, even though I didn't like, and I love Lester, I didn't like the way Lester was questioning the president that day, because there was a kind of false equivalency. Lester's talking to Joe Biden, the president, in the White House about a word he used, about bullseye or something. And you can't compare the president using one word in a private gathering with all the things that Donald Trump has said publicly. And so Lester is pressing this point about civility and about the language, but you seize on one word to do that. So I just thought Lester respectfully was in the wrong frame that particular day and didn't approach that thing the way he should have. But the point was, when the president started pushing back on Lester, Lester being a pro, handled it brilliantly. And there's a long list of black journalists who I've seen in some real tough situations, doing some tough interviews, who held their decorum. I'll just stop there. But they just, the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. I thought it was a missed opportunity. I thought NABJ respectfully was not ready. I hope there are lessons they will learn from that. And again, none of us are perfect. God knows I'm certainly not. But I just thought it was a missed opportunity on a lot of different fronts.
You know, I mean, it's not like Trump hadn't said this before, but what do you think when he answered that first question? He said he's been the best president for black people since Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Is Trump just not unapologetically Trump? Like, when you say something that in your face, that black and white, knowing the room you're sitting in, is this guy just lost, or does he really believe that?
He is who he is. And as Maya Angelou said many, many years ago, when folks show you who they are, believe them. And I would add, believe them the first time.
There you go.
That's my point. We know who Donald Trump is. So responding to him in a way that gets him going only aids and abets what he's attempting to do. And in Chicago, in that room, the audience took that bait, hook, line, and sinker. They took the bait. And what you have to understand about Donald Trump is that he is at his best, I'm putting that in air quotes, whatever he defines as his best, he's at his best in adversarial situations. Have you ever noticed that? When he's in an adversarial, tete-a-tete, mano-a-mano situation, when you come at him, he comes back even harder. So again, I'm putting the word best in air quotes, but he does his thing the way he does it in adversarial relationship to someone or some people. And in that instance in Chicago, it was the best. It's like you're a music guy, I'm a music guy. We always love when our favorite artists put out the best of album, the best of.
Yes.
That day on that stage, you saw the greatest hits of Donald Trump. That's what you saw. You saw Donald Trump's greatest hits. He was throwing them one after another, and the audience was eating it up. I'll say another thing. In those moments, what I think we miss, and what the audience of black folk particularly, not all black folk, but that audience missed that day, was that they took it hook, line, and sinker, number one. But you got to understand that Donald Trump on national television at NABJ ain't really talking to the Negroes in that audience. He's really not talking to black people. He's talking past you to his base, to his followers, to his supporters, to folk who may be on the fence. And he's showing you in a campaign that's clearly going to have race all throughout it, that I ain't afraid to talk to these black people this way. I'm not afraid to go into the lion's den and to tell them what I really think. I'm not afraid, ... So the message he's sending is not even really to the folk in the room. He's talking to the folk outside of that room who see he is unafraid. He has no fear. He will be who he is wherever he is. And again, none of us in black America are fond of that, except maybe Tim Scott and the few Negroes they had speaking at the RNC.
My God.
But for all the rest of us who got some good sense, for the rest of us who have our heads on straight, you know, we know that Trump is who he is, but I just don't like seeing us fall for that banana in the tailpipe. And that's what I thought happened that day in Chicago.
I am seeing, as I'm sure you are, Trump's been racking up. He's got a lot of black celebrities that are now unafraid to say, I'm supporting Trump. You know, People like former NFL star Antonio Brown, Don King, rappers Kodak Black, Lil Wayne, Sexy Red, obviously Kanye West. These are people who are from the culture, who are cultural leaders, who have large followings, and are standing on the front line saying, look, I'm with Trump. And I don't care what y'all, and I hate to put this woman in the conversation as a celebrity. Mm-hmm. Maybe she is to some, but what's her name? Kanye
Rose.
West. There you go, Amber Rose.
Yeah, I feel you going there.
Gets invited to the RNC, stands up and delivers what some would call a very powerful speech. What's happening? Are we watching a change in real time?
I think we're just watching a spectacle. That's all it is. I wouldn't put much more on it than that. It's spectacle. Black people, as we well know, are not a monolith. We don't all agree on the same things, on the same issues. We don't see things the same way. We don't view the world through the same prism. And yet there are always those who are contrarian, to put it generously, to be charitable about it. I'll just call them contrarians. Let me just say this, and this I hope will make the point. I remember how heartbroken I was in college, frankly, near the end of my college career, when I was taking a couple of African-American studies courses. And one of my professors, Dr. Fred McElroy and Dr. William Wiggins, two of my professors, Dr. William Wiggins, Dr. Fred McElroy at Indiana University in Bloomington. I was taking a couple of their classes, and I had to come to terms, Prez, with the knowledge that I was being exposed to, that there were Africans who sold other Africans into slavery.
Yes.
I could not wrap my brain. I had seen Roots as a kid growing up, but I could not wrap my brain around the fact that Africans would sell other Africans into slavery. It took me a long time to just process my way through that. I remember vividly how it made me feel. I mean, I was upset. I was disturbed for days behind that, because I just had never processed it in that way, and my professors were getting me to wrestle with that on a number of different fronts in a variety of ways. I bring it full circle to make the point that you and I are discussing now. There are always going to be those who will say the most outrageous things, sell their souls, a bunch of black Judases, if you will, for those who are Christians and for those who know all about that story. Judas betrayed him. Peter denied him. I tell folk all the time that Jesus had 12 disciples. Here's how I run my company. Here's how I run my life. Jesus had 12 disciples. I remind you that Jesus handpicked his 12 disciples. They weren't given to him. Jesus, that first century Palestinian Jew named Jesus, he handpicked his 12 disciples. And Peter denied him 3 times before the cock crowed.
There you go.
Judas sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. We use the phrase all the time, doubting Thomas. That comes from the Bible. Yep. Thomas doubted that it was Jesus when he came back out the grave. I can keep going. That's just 3 right there. My point is, if you ever get 12 Negroes around you, 3 or 4 of them ain't no good. Just to start with that. If Jesus handpicked his own disciples and 3 or 4 or 5 of them wasn't no good, then your numbers can't be better than Jesus. So I figure if I got 12 Negroes around me, I start looking at 5 of them. I know 4 or 5 of them ain't ride or die. And so my point is that you think of all the black folk in this country, it ought not to surprise us that there are some folk like the ones on the list you read a moment ago, who gonna try to sell the rest of us out, who just don't see it the way we see it. And on that point again, I digress.
You know, I wish people would look beyond just who they're voting for that 4-year term.
Yeah.
Because really what you're voting for are Supreme Court justices that have lifetime tenure. Between 2016 and 2020, the years Donald was in office, he brought onto the bench Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. 3 Supreme Court justices within his 4 years in office. You still have Clarence Thomas serving, and I believe, was it Reagan or first Bush that put him in office?
Daddy Bush.
Yeah. I just think people need to think beyond the here and the now and really think about your children and what you want this country to look like, because the highest court in the land are shaping the laws that are going to govern your children and your children's children for the very foreseeable future. So whenever I'm talking to people, you got to really take into account who you vote for, because God forbid you get a Ruth Bader Ginsburg who passes away on a Republican's watch. Oh, we got another one. You're really, really tampering with the future of your children and your children's children.
No,
go ahead.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'd only add to that right quick that when I said earlier in our dialogue that Joe Biden is not as progressive as I would have wanted him to be, Kamala Harris is not as progressive in her policies as I would like to see her be. Case in point, Joe Biden came out some days ago, as you know, and did a strong speech about his Supreme Court reform ideas. Laid out 3 ideas for reforming the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes.
Well, first of all, you just not figuring this out? Just like I asked earlier, y'all Democrats just figured out Joe Biden was old? Joe Biden is an institutionalist, and that's why he didn't want to move on the Supreme Court. And I don't believe that Joe Biden would have come out with those Supreme Court reforms had he stayed on the ballot. But once you stand down, you pass the torch to Kamala, and you can be a little bit more bold, a little bit more aggressive about certain things. So there's no chance that his recommendations take any sort of flight in a political election year, but he'll go down on the record giving a great speech, calling for great reforms, but ain't nothing gonna happen. And again, I'm not even sure we would have gotten that speech from him had he still been on the ballot. I don't know. My point is that there's so many ways that, and so many issues around which I just think we need to push a little harder, stretch our political and moral imagination, be a bit more progressive in our thinking, imagine a world that we want to live in, and fight for those things that we believe in. So I was heartened to see the president come out and give that speech. I just wonder what might have happened had he done that sooner and we really started to push on at least one of those 3 reforms.
Yeah, I guess we will never know at this point. I don't know, had he not been on his way out, would he have given that same speech?
Yeah.
But I do wish that whoever gets in office picks up on that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's necessary. I think there absolutely needs to be term limits.
Yeah.
Especially as some of these Supreme Court justices are getting older and older and older. And America's changing.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the covenants in your book is about policing in our community. I'm sure you saw the video now. Sonia Massey being gunned down in her home. Her last words on planet Earth was, Satan, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, and then sorry. We watched George Floyd. We watched that for all of the 9 minutes and I believe 42 seconds. But to see this officer, a male officer, a woman who was unarmed, calls on the name of Jesus, and then proceeds to shoot her 3 times in the head, once through her eye. If your book, The Covenant with Black America, and one of those covenants being about policing and changing the policing in our community, has never been more viable than it is right now, today. Can you speak to your thoughts on it?
Yeah. You and I both have this in common, having grown up in and been formed and shaped by the Pentecostal church.
Yes.
When I heard that phrase, it hit me. It hit me in my spirit, in my soul. Because there have been many times in my life where I've uttered those same words. In the name of Jesus, Satan, I rebuke you. Get behind me. The Bible that I read says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, against principalities, against the rulers of darkness and evil in this world. So for those of us who believe in that and are guided in that, that phrase of rebuking Satan and telling him to get behind us is not foreign. So it hit me so viscerally because those words, again, are not foreign to me. With regard to your question about the text, the Covenant with Black America 20 years later, one of the covenants 10 years ago was about police accountability. And as I said earlier, there are parts of this book that are heartening to wrestle with, other parts of the book that are distressing to wrestle with, about the ways in which we have not gained much traction, not covered much ground in these past 2 decades. The writer of the essay in this book, again, there are only 2 essayists who wrote in the book 20 years ago who are back in this book, Mark Morial from the Urban League, writing about economics, and Tyrone Taborn writing about technology. The other 8 essayists from the original covenants are different, with a different perspective this time around. I write in my introduction to the book that I don't have to agree with everything that the essayists in this book write, but I am open to a robust conversation about the ideas that they bring forth. We ought to have an earnest conversation and a debate about that in Black America. So the writer of this essay is Melina Abdullah, Dr. Melina Abdullah, who just happens to be, she wasn't at the time, happens to be the running mate for Cornel West in his independent campaign for the White House. She is known quite well in the Black Lives Matter community. She founded the LA chapter of BLM. She's now one of the leaders of Black BLM grassroots, professor for many years in LA, in Southern California. So Melina is brilliant in her own right. Her view is different than mine in this book. Melina argues that we don't need cops. We should not have police. She argues that the things that we do need, what we do need, she argues, are resources. We need resources to do the things, some of the things that cops have traditionally done, but we don't need cops. I invite you to read the book, Covenant of Black America 20 years later, and to see how she slices and dices this in her own way. She makes a powerful, powerful case. I'm of the mind that we do need law enforcement. I just want the right law enforcement, those who respect the humanity and the dignity of Black people. But here's where Melina and I do align, absolutely align. There are some things, Prez, that police are called upon to do that they ought not be called upon to do. To my mind, there's absolutely no reason why the cops should have been called to the home of Sonya Massey in the first place. That is not a role that I believe that police ought to play, because too often we end up with stories like these where folk need help and they end up being dead. They need help, they end up being murdered. So there's certain things I just think police, certain roles they ought not to play. But I'm prepared to have, again, a rigorous debate with Melina, Abdullah, or anybody else about what that means. And that, again, is the purpose of this book. These are the top 10 issues that matter to black people. And we need to be debating these issues, addressing these issues, advancing these issues now more than ever. I should add very quickly, just if I can pivot, if you don't mind, there were 10 original covenants, and those 10 covenants remain, of course, in this 20 years later edition. But there is a bonus covenant, an additional covenant that we added in this book, as you know, because you've read it, that wasn't in the original book. And it is a covenant that we call the urgency of now. I wish I owned that phrase. As you know, that's Dr. King's phrase.
Yep.
Obama used it a lot during his White House years and during his candidacy, but that's Kingian to the core, the urgency of now. We call it the urgency of now, homelessness. 20 years ago, when we wrote this book, homelessness was not as acute for our people as it is right now. But make no mistake about it, black people from California to the Carolinas are now the face of homelessness in America. There's a survey they do every year, Prez, called Point in Time. Point in Time. And on this particular night, all across the country, volunteers go out at a point in time, call it a Kairos moment, to count the number of homeless. In 2023, 654,000 people, rounding up slightly, 654,000 people were homeless on that one night, that one point in time. And the face of that homelessness is black. So there's a new covenant in this book that addresses that issue and what black folk need to be doing about it. I just wanted to add that since you mentioned the covenants. But back to your point, your question about police accountability, we need a debate about that. We need a conversation about that. We need some advancement on that. Melina puts her stick in the ground. She stands firm on why we don't need police in black America. Read the text, you'll see her argument. But we do, in fact, align, as I said earlier, on the fact there's certain things that police just ought not to be doing. And if police hadn't been called, Sonya Massey might still be with us.
Yeah, Dr. Melina Abdullah, she is well known for her work in the community. I must agree with you. I don't think we should be policing ourselves. I'm not one of those who support defund the police. I think that there needs to be an overhaul, a way in which we redo this thing, if you will. But it's hurtful to the core. I'm an African-American man born and raised in the Bronx, New York.
The boogie down, the boogie down.
There you go, the boogie down. And you know, within your books, you gave some facts on community policing, and a couple of things really stood out to me. You know, how a black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without just cause than a white person. Mm-hmm. I'm living proof of that. Yeah. I'm 6'4", 220 pounds. I can't tell you how many times I've walked down the street and was just asked for no reason to get against the wall. For no reason. Mm-hmm. You catch somebody on a bad day after they've been asked 10 times before that, you'll see them act out of character, not understand, and then it becomes this person was resistant, so that's why we had to shoot him. Not understand the psyche of this man. How many times are y'all gonna pull me over for walking while being black? And it's real, but I must say I don't necessarily agree with her stance, but I do like her text about Waukesha Wilson's law, and I think everybody should read that. I think that it's a fascinating story. And I think many Americans, especially within the I'll say many Black Americans will understand, and that story will hit home for them. You know, I should have touched on this earlier when we were speaking about former President Trump. There was an assassination attempt on his life in rural Pennsylvania. The young man who did it, Thomas Matthew Crooks, this guy is a registered Republican, 20 years old. Were you shocked when the facts came out about this man who tried to take out former President Trump?
I was surprised that he was in fact a registered Republican, but my mind went to a different place. We live in a world now where people will do just about anything to get attention. And I'm still not sure, from what I've read, that we understand what his motives were. I'm not even sure the FBI at this point, Prez.
No motive has come out yet.
Yeah, exactly. We still don't know what his motives are. So my point is simply this. I've seen people do some pretty strange things. You have, the whole nation has. People have done some pretty strange things to get attention. Mental illness is as real as rain. And if they're in that frame, what they do doesn't have to make sense to all the rest of us. I remember years ago, one of my brothers was addicted to crack. And it was so difficult for my family. Here we are, you know, born and raised in the Pentecostal church. And you know, the one thing that you don't think about when you're in that frame, grow up in that environment, is that somebody in your family is going to end up being a crackhead. Which just goes to show that none of us are human and divine. We're just human. And any of us can fall prey to any particular temptation at any point in time in our lives. I stopped saying many, many years ago what I would never do. I just don't think I have the capacity or the ability to say I would never do X, Y, or Z. You don't know until you're in that situation. But one of my brothers, I've got 7 younger brothers, and one of them for a period of time, too long a period of time, was addicted to crack cocaine. And he would do strange things, you know, break in my mama's house and steal this. Kind of reminds you of Gator in the Spike Lee film, right? Reminds you of Gator. And so my mom couldn't understand this. And one day I had to literally sit her down, hold her hands, and look her in the face and explain to her, Mama, it's not that he doesn't love you. If he loves me, how could he do this? It's not that he doesn't love you. He is a crackhead. He is addicted. Were he not addicted, were he in his right mind, he'd be the same loving child that he's always been. But he's not in that frame of mind right now. And as a crackhead, addicted and desperate, he would do whatever he needs to do to get that next hit. So I was trying to say to her, you can't talk about him without understanding that he's a crackhead. This is where he is right about now. And I only share that story to make the point that when people are wrestling with mental illness, they do things that don't make sense to the rest of us. And I don't know what his mental condition was. But again, as a Republican, you would think he might not do something like that. But again, I've seen people do all kinds of things that make no sense to the rest of us because they're wrestling with issues or wrestling with demons that we know not of. And people, again, will do all kinds of things for attention. So we may never know what his motivations were. So was I shocked? Not really shocked, maybe a bit surprised, but I must honestly tell you, and Donald Trump is Exhibit A. The longer I live, Prez, very little surprises me. Because I could never have imagined we'd have a president named Donald Trump who would push the envelope not just off the table and out the door and down the street, but like basically off the planet. I mean, he's just kicked that envelope so far. Anyway, don't get me started about that. My point is that there are a lot of things that I don't understand. I think I told you the last time we talked about one of the many lessons I learned from Maya Angelou, like a godmother to me. And we friends for 27 years. I wrote a book called Maya and Me about my friendship with her for almost 30 years. And one of the things that she told me many, many years ago is that, Tavis, you have to accept the fact, and the sooner you do this, the better off you'll be. You're going to have to, at some point, accept the fact that there's some questions in your life to which you are never going to get answers. All of our questions in life don't come with answers. And so I remind myself of that all the time in certain situations. So I don't know all the answers to why he did what he did. But again, these days, very, very little surprises me about human behavior.
You know, I think that when I found out that he was a registered Republican, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was also shocked because now it's come out that he was on the radar of local police and Secret Service for 90 minutes prior to the shooting. I couldn't understand how someone with a rifle could climb on a roof 500 feet away from where a presidential hopeful is speaking, and with drones, with Secret Service, up in trees and perched in windows, how somebody can get that close. And it's not like he's a professional hitman.
Yeah.
He's an amateur at best. And get off 8 rounds before being taken out.
Yeah.
I was shocked by that alone.
There are a couple things come to mind right quick. I'll probably get myself in trouble again, but here we go. First of all, you remember that when Obama was president, Secret Service had a couple lax moments themselves. And at one time, somebody got over the fence and in the White House. And as black folk, we were none too happy about that. This is our first black president. We trusted y'all to protect him. Somebody, that somebody shouldn't have got over that fence and inside the White House. So you see these stories from time to time where, as good as they are, mistakes are made, as they say. I will say this, Secret Service has to get it right every time. They can't afford to they can't make one mistake, man. So in that sense, we got to give them their respect, that they get these things right all the time, and we know not of it. You can rest assured that the death threats against Barack Obama went through the roof exponentially when that black man was president. And Secret Service, even with those lapses, were able to get it right every time. And so I do feel for them that it can't be lax at any time and allow this to happen. But they did get inside the White House during the Obama era. That's the first point. The second point is, and here's where I get in trouble, you raised some powerful questions about how X, Y, and Z could have happened. And, well, let me just say it. Johnny Cochran once said that race is a part of everything in America. I think that there are ways in which that our white brothers and sisters move in spaces where they are not suspect as they move because they're not a 6'4", 220-pound black man. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You take my point. They can move through spaces and in spaces and not be seen, not be suspect, because they're not 6'4", 220-pound black men. And I don't know all his movement that day. I just know that if he is like every other white guy I know, he can move through spaces without being looked at, without being profiled, without being told to get up against the wall, as you have been many times in New York City because of the way you look. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, you raise a very, very interesting point. And we know at the time, the acting director of the Secret Service was grilled and has stepped down. Some people should have lost their job.
Well, somebody did, the director, as you well know. Yeah.
Without a doubt. You know, I had the opportunity to sit and speak with Sergeant Nicholas Irvin. He is or was an Army Ranger, sniper with 33 confirmed kills, 6 deployments, 5 of which he saw combat. And he said something that was interesting. He said Kamala has no chance of beating Trump after Trump had just almost gotten shot. He said at that point, Trump had that thing in the bag.
No one's going to have a chance of beating Trump right now. No one. Not from his camp, not from the Biden presidency, not from his campaign, not Harris. No one from that campaign presidency has a chance against Trump right now. No one. Absolutely
Why?
no one. Trump's too powerful. He's too powerful right now. Like, he's putting on the fifth Thanos ring. Like, Trump just went Super Saiyan level 5. After yesterday, Trump he leveled up.
You find any truth to that statement?
Well, we discussed this earlier briefly, and that is this sort of messianic figure that he's become because he survived that assassination attempt. And you saw that on display in the days after at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. And these weren't all white people. Tim Scott out of South Carolina, the senator, and others basically brought their Bible on the podium and started thumping on that Bible, talking about how God saved Donald Trump and he's God's man of action. He's God's man for this hour, right? You got that kind of language. So I wasn't surprised by that. I mean, the minute I saw him survive that attempt, I was like, oh, Lord, we in trouble now. I didn't go as far as your guess to say that it's in the bag for Donald Trump, but I knew that all these right-wing Christians were going to just wrap themselves in this notion that God saved him, as the Bible says, for such a time as this. You know that phrase, that God saved him for such a time as this. I knew that was going to happen. The part that I found fascinating about that particular moment where he survives the assassination attempt is, again, how black culture is always on display, even people aren't, necessarily tuned into it. So Donald Trump has been shot at, apparently. He survives this assassination attempt. And his first instinct in that moment, Prez, as you saw, was to put his fist up in the air like a black man. Like he's John Carlos or Tommy Smith at the 68 Olympics. Like he's Huey Newton, a Black Panther. He got that fist up in the air yelling, fight, fight, fight. And I just found that really, really fascinating. That at this particular moment, what Donald Trump is doing with that fist up in the air is appropriating black culture. I can assure you that the Klan never had a fist raised up in the air.
Oh no!
As part of their thing, man. But Donald Trump in that moment once again appropriates black culture with that fist up in the air, and I just found that to be fascinating. That again, what we give the world is so hegemonic. Not that I had any other choice, but if God had asked me, would I want to be anything else? No. I am quite happy with being a black man, never mind all the hell I have to endure every day for being a black man. I wouldn't want to be anything else. I am so glad that God made me who he made me. I am happy and comfortable and grateful to be in the skin that I'm in. And every day I look up and I see all the ways in which we have impacted the world. Du Bois, the great black intellectual, once put it this way: would America have been America without her Negro people? Would America have been America without her Negro people? We know the answer is a resounding no. But even in this moment of turmoil and travail, Donald Trump has the presence of mind to put that fist up in the air like he's a Black Panther. And I just cracked up when I saw that, man.
You said like he's Huey P. Newton.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, you touched on, actually, you said this quote earlier, but I'm going to read it from your book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go into something else because you keep bringing a name up that we got to talk about. You said the opinions expressed by the essayists in this book belong to those who wrote them. We need not agree on their particular point of views to engage in a robust exchange of ideas about how to make Black America better. I welcome the debate and hope you do too, because when we make Black America better, we make all America better. with that in mind, you have brought up the name Tim Scott no less than 3 times in this conversation. I am trying my best to honor his points of views on how he sees America and himself as a black man in America. I thought how about this? I had the hardest time watching him stand at the RNC and say, America is not a racist country. Is he, in your opinion, just playing the game? Or does he truly feel, does he come from a place that he does not see the obvious? I don't think America is the same America that it was in the 1700s, the 1800s. But to stand before America and say that America is not a racist country, maybe I'm missing something. How do you interpret that?
So there are a couple answers to this. Number one, I've said time and time again, I still stand by this. Racism, I believe, is still the most intractable issue in this country. I believe that. There are a number of issues that I think are in that intractable category. And I won't detour us in that way. But at the top of that list for me is racism, the most intractable issue in this country. In part because we don't want to deal with it earnestly. We don't want to deal with it transparently. And so it remains this issue that we seem to take a step forward and 2 steps back. There are many people who thought that the election of Barack Obama was going to usher us into some sort of post-racial America. That didn't happen, so we know better than that now. But the sad part is that there's something about being in electoral politics and not being willing to tell the truth that snags folk, rather, both on the left and the right. So here's the shocker. Tim Scott isn't the only black person in the Senate who said that America is not a racist country. In the past 4 years as vice president, Kamala Harris also said that America is not a racist country. Now, you can try to define that and split that and splice that anywhere you want, but Kamala Harris in this instance said the same thing that Tim Scott said. And there's something about the nature of being in these high positions that don't allow people to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I am not naive about this. I am not stuck on stupid. I was debating this very thing with a friend of mine the other day, a very noted black journalist who in fact is a Pulitzer Prize winner, who said to me, but Tavis, you know she can't say that. You know she can't tell the truth about America being a racist country and be elected. And I said to him, then what is the point? What is the point? If we're voting for people who can't tell the truth, then what is the point? Again, no naivete. I'm not stuck on stupid, but you've gone just a little too far for me when you come out and say that America is not a racist country. So I feel that way about Tim Scott, and I felt the same way about Kamala Harris, which brings me to this. This is why I say all the time that we have got to be willing to hold all of our elected officials, including the black ones, including the ones that we want to see become president, including the ones we're giving money to, as they raised $300 million in 1 month, including those who we're all excited about, including those who will become African-American first. I don't care who they are. If they are putting themselves up, offer themselves up to be an elected official, much less the leader of the American empire, you have to have a critique. You have to ask some tough questions. That does not mean you hate them. I ain't going back to me and Obama all those years ago. You and I discussed that the last time I joined you. But that's what I was saying then. Just because we love the brother and we're supporting the brother and we're voting for the brother and we're praying for the brother doesn't mean we can't query the brother. We still have to ask the right questions because this brother is the head of the American empire. And the same will be true of Kamala if she pulls this off. Don't tell me you ain't got no critique.
Great presidents aren't born, they're made. Great presidents have to be pushed into their greatness. And I believe, that left to their own devices, they end up being garden variety politicians rather than growing into what it means to be a statesman. And so every time Barack Obama and I would talk during the campaign, I would say to him, brother, don't sell your soul, don't surrender your soul, and don't let them steal your soul. At whatever cost, you have to protect your soul. And we would end every conversation. He'd say, Tavis, you do what you got to do, and I'm going to do what I got to do. So he was running for president. His job was to get elected. My job was to hold him accountable to the best interest of our people. And that's what I did. And all that I was trying to do, or will ever try to do with any president, is to do my part to push them into their greatness. And that means you have to hold them accountable to the best interest of your people. So I love Barack Obama then. I love him now. I voted for him not once, but twice, like everybody else I know. And there are two of the proudest moments of my life, going into the polls, into the booth to vote for Barack Obama. But that does not mean that as a supporter of Barack Obama, that I don't get a chance to hold him accountable to the best interest of my people. And at the end of the day, I don't care how much you love Barack Obama. When he was president, he was the head of the American empire. There is no way that you can be black and not have a critique of the American empire. You have to have a critique of the American empire. And so whoever's running that empire must always be willing to hear the critique of those of us who built this nation and made it what it is.
I've seen people who've caught hell already just for asking tough questions about Kamala. Well, that's a legitimate question to ask. Do you really believe, do you still believe that America is not a racist country? That is a legitimate question. Don't hate because somebody asked that question. It's a legitimate question. And she's running for president. And she said it. Why should we not ask her about it? So my point is, the same three words I told you that the frame that I had around Obama is the same frame I have around Kamala Harris. Three words: respect, protect, correct. Respect, protect, correct. I respect Kamala Harris. I will protect Kamala Harris from all these vicious white supremacist, racist attacks, but I will correct Kamala Harris in love when the sister is wrong. And the sooner all of us get in that frame and not get so caught up with the black thing that we lose sight of what it means to hold them accountable, the better off we'll all be. I hope that 16 years later, we've learned some lessons. I'm not convinced of that yet, because I see a lot of people just going with the flow. But we've been through this one time already. I hope that we learn some lessons. You can ask tough questions of Kamala Harris. She's a big girl. She can handle it. You can ask tough questions without being called a hater, without being called a traitor. Please, please, please. Somebody show me some lessons we've learned 16 years later.
You know, you're in media and you're expected to ask the tough question, just like many others, but many will not. You caught hell, to put it mildly, when you were asking the tough questions of the first African American president who was beloved at the time. Will you go? I'll just come straight out and ask it. Did you learn your lesson? like, did that fire get too damn hot? Like, you 16 years older now.
Yeah.
Do you even want to? Because stepping your toe back in that hot water.
let me just quote that great philosopher Popeye. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. I only have one way to be. I said to you, we talked before, that my role in life, not just as a broadcaster, my role as a human being, is to seek the truth, to speak the truth, to stand on the truth, and to stay with the truth. I recognize, as I told you, I do not have a monopoly on the truth. I recognize there's the truth and there's the way to the truth. And everybody doesn't get there the same time I get there. So I got to be humble enough to recognize that my truth may not be your truth today. But I also have to have the courage to say what I see. I only know one way. And it was a very, very, very difficult number of years for me trying to navigate the Obama era. But thank God for Jesus, I'm still here. I'm still doing what I do. And it's not about, if I learned a lesson, it is simply this, that sometimes black folk can't hear truth in real time. That's what I learned, that sometimes we cannot hear, we are not prepared to wrestle with the truth in real time. And yet, that does not mean that I get to abrogate my responsibility from saying what it is that I see. And so I don't know that fundamentally I've changed anything about the way I do what I do. I still do it in love. I still say that I love black folk and there ain't nothing they can do about it. I just love them. But these tough questions need to be asked. And so I hope that we as a community have learned some lessons from 16 years ago and that we can ask the tough questions. I'll tell you this, that was fascinating for me, Prez, and you saw it, everybody saw it. I never thought I would live to see the day where black folk en masse would go in on Barack Obama. But they did. When Barack Obama came out after President Biden said, throw my support behind Kamala Harris, passing the torch. The Clintons came out, we're behind Kamala Harris. Other electeds and other notables started coming out saying we're behind Kamala Harris. And President Obama initially said, I want to open convention. We need an open primary. We need to open this up and let it do what it do. I'm paraphrasing, of course, he didn't say it that way. These Negroes went in on Barack Obama. All across the internet, they went in on him for not getting in line with them fast enough behind Kamala Harris. This ain't what Tavis is, it ain't me. Don't take my word for it. Everybody, y'all know it, y'all saw it, we all saw it. Black people went in on Barack Obama, and eventually he and the former First Lady, Michelle, we love them both. They eventually came out, got behind Kamala, and it is what it is, and they're going to campaign, they said, and try to help her get elected. But it was just a fascinating moment for me personally, to your point, remembering all the hell that I caught trying to hold him accountable. And then you fast forward 16 years and all these black people now are themselves trying to hold Barack Obama accountable for getting in line behind Kamala Harris. It was just a fascinating turn of the tables, if any of that makes sense to you. I never thought I would see that because black people love him so much. But again, here's my point. I don't believe those black people who went in on Barack Obama online for that comment about an open process and not lining up immediately behind Kamala, I don't believe those black people all of a sudden hated Barack Obama. They were holding him accountable in that moment. You see my point?
Oh, yeah.
So if y'all didn't hate Obama when you held him accountable on Kamala, then why is it that I hated Obama but I'm trying to hold him accountable 16 years ago? It doesn't fit. Again, I don't lose sleep over this. As Jay-Z said, I got 99 problems. This ain't one of them. It's been 16 years since that happened. I don't lose any sleep about that. I am comfortable with what I said and what I did. I'm grateful to God to still be doing what I do in the way that I do it. But it was just fascinating for me that in that moment, black folk writ large understood what it meant to hold Obama accountable then. They just couldn't get it 16 years ago.
Well, I would tell you this. I know you are who you are, but you ain't that young boy you used to be. You coming up on that big 6-0.
I am.
Maybe you better let others speak the truth.
That's funny.
I know you feel like, Shawn, I can still get in the ring. I'm built for it. But you got other things to do.
Yeah. All right.
Speaking of your 60th birthday
Yes.
coming up, you'll be accepting the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award on September 13th, your birthday.
Yeah.
What does an amazing honor like that mean to you?
Yeah. Frankly, I'm still trying to find the words. It's especially meaningful now knowing that President Biden is leaving office at the end of this first and final term. But to be receiving the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, what I've tried to do over the course of my career, specifically my humanitarian work, obviously I'm humbled by it. I am just deeply appreciative that the honor will be presented, as you said, on September 13th, my 60th birthday. That is obviously meaningful for me and for my family. I live in LA, obviously. My family is back in the Midwest in Indiana, where I grew up. And with my 9 brothers and sisters and mom and dad, over the course of my being in LA for 30 plus years, they've all come to visit me, of course, at various times. But the only time that my entire family came out at one time to be with me was when I received my star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. My entire family came out. And that was like the most special 3 days of my life. My entire family, all my siblings, my mom and dad, everybody came out to be with me for that very special occasion. And this is such a high honor, the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, that all of my family, once again, will be coming out to LA for this event on my birthday, September 13th, as I turn 60 to receive this honor. So more than anything else, I must honestly tell you, I'm grateful for the acknowledgement, but I'm just excited about my family coming out and to be there with me. As you know, because you and I talked offline, and I appreciate your condolences, I lost my father a few months ago. My father's the first person in my immediate family to make his transition. And that's been hard on me and my entire family. My father was an amazing man. My father worked multiple jobs to take care of 10 kids, 5 of whom he did not birth. And then my grandmother, Big Mama, came to live with us. So there were 13 of us living in a trailer. And if I could ever just be half the man that my father was, I would take that. And so I'm saddened that my father won't be with us for this occasion on the 13th. But I think he'll be smiling. And I have always tried to live a life that would honor my mother and my father. And I hope even posthumously, my father is still being honored on the occasion of this honor. My mom, of course, will be there to celebrate with me. So I'm excited about my family coming out. But I have tried to engage a work and a witness doing work that's meaningful to my community. And that anybody would take time to celebrate that, to honor that, particularly on the humanitarian front, with the work I've tried to do on poverty, the work I've tried to do with young people, the work we're doing now on climate justice. I've tried to do some work, I think, that I hope, at least, is making a dent, making some difference. And so to be honored in this way with the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award means a great deal to me. I don't know how I'm going to process it on the night of the actual occasion, but right now I'm still being cool about it. I may completely fall apart that night. You'll be there, so you let me know. I hope you'll be there, so you let me know how I do that night.
No, I'll definitely be there. I wouldn't miss it. I'm looking forward to it. You know, Tavis, I marvel every time we speak because I love to see folks from humble beginnings. I mean, we speaking about America through this whole conversation, but to achieve that American dream, I mean, you just mentioned in passing, you got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That is incredible. You're not a singer. You're not an actor. You are, as you said, who you are. And to be recognized in that city where you live, and that star being placed, and now to have your family come out to see you on another incredible occasion, get this Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. I can tell you, just sitting here as your friend, as a fellow Black man, I am so proud of you, brother, for all the work that you've done over the years and for all that you continue to do. I say this with all sincerity. I'm proud of you, and I know I speak for so many others. I love what you're doing with the radio station, KBLA. I love how over the last 3, 4 years? How many?
3 years now, 3 years, yeah.
It's 3 years. You're now syndicated on what, 40 other stations? Your
Yep.
talk show?
Yep.
Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I promised myself today when I showed up that I was not going to shed a tear, because last time you had me up in here giving up all kind of water. And so I'm sitting here now fighting these tears again because I said I wouldn't do it. But I am grateful. I am, see, here we go. I told you I wasn't going to do this, man. I am deeply grateful for all of the opportunities that have come my way. I'm grateful to my community for loving me, for supporting me, even in the dark and difficult periods when they didn't understand me or disagree with me. I am only here because of the love of Black people. And you better believe and better know I understand that. I am grateful for all the stages and platforms that God has blessed me to have in broader spaces, NPR, PBS, ABC, CNN. I've been blessed to work a lot of places and do, hopefully, work that makes my community proud. But at the end of the day, I am very, very clear about why I do what I do, for whom I do what I do. As I said to you before in one of our conversations, for me, it's about what I call the 3 Fs: faith, family, and friends. So I am first and foremost grateful to God for just imbuing me with whatever skill set I have to try to leave the world better than when I found it. Obviously, I mentioned my family a moment ago, how much I love my family, and I'm grateful for all the friends who will be with me on September 13th to celebrate this Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. That means, again, the world to me. But at the end of the day, we are sent here. We are allowed to come here for a particular purpose. And I hope that I am living in my purpose. I've said many times that God grants and gives each of us gifts. And for each of the gifts that God gives us, there is a corresponding need. There's no reason for God to gift you in these particular and peculiar and unique ways if there's no need for that gift. So each of us is gifted, but there's a need for your gift. And when your gift connects with its need, you're living a life of purpose. And I feel very grateful that I have been able to use the gifts that God has given me and to apply them to the needs of my people and to feel like I'm living a life of purpose. So I say all the time that gratitude is the gateway to greatness. I believe that gratitude is the gateway to greatness. So I just try to live in a space of gratitude every single day. And when you have been through the things I've been through, when you've been to hell and back, then every day is more precious than before. And every day you get yourself up and you recommit yourself to doing the best for your people. And I think I said to you before, I'm turning 60. I hope I got more years left in front of me. I got a lot more work I want to do. But when that time comes, because none of us gets out of here alive, when that time comes, if all they put on my tombstone is that he loved his people, I'd be okay with that. He loved his people. Because for me, that's what it's all about, trying to love and serve all of humanity. But that unapologetically starts for me with my own people. And that's my story, man.
No, well said, brother. Well said. Well said. That's one of those drop the mic moments. I got to keep you for just a little. I feel like we should end it right there, but I can't let you go. It's a couple of more things I want to talk about, if that's all right with you.
All right. Hit me.
You recently, Talkers Magazine, they released the 2024 Heavy 100 list. For anybody that doesn't know Talkers Magazine, they put out a list with the most important talk radio show hosts in the USA, and you are now 33 on that list. I had an opportunity to look at the list. From 1 to 32 are all white. You are the first African-American person on that list this year. 1 to 32, you're number 33. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on the list. I was at number 45 last year, and my brother, Derwin, who's probably watching right now, my brother Derwin, we called him Doobie. Doobie said to me on more than one occasion, Negro, next year you got to get off of 45 because you know who number 45 is, right? So he was like, you got to get off of 45. So I went to work, try to do my part to get off of 45 to make my brother happy. So I'm grateful that I jumped, whatever that is, 12 spaces from 45 to 33. I take your point that there are 32 white folk above me, mostly all conservatives, because talk radio is a conservative medium. I call it a conservative citadel. So in some ways, it's almost surprising that I show up at number 33 as the first black person on the list. So I'm grateful for that on the one hand. On the other hand, it shows all the work that needs to be done. Last year, I received the Freedom of Speech Award, the highest award in the talk radio industry. It's called the Freedom of Speech Award. I was humbled last year to be the recipient of that award. And in my acceptance speech, I took a moment. I didn't know I was going to land on this largely white conservative audience. But I took a moment to share with them that we are inexorably hurtling toward that moment where for the first time in American history, the nation will be more majority colored than it is white. People of color will outnumber our white brothers and sisters. America will be a majority minority country, if you will, just a few years from now. And so I was saying to them, this audience in my acceptance speech, that if you are a content producer, if you are a product producer, and you don't understand what these demographic shifts mean, and you don't start to address them now, you are going to be bankrupt. Not just ideologically, but financially bankrupt. Because that's the America that we're living in, and that's where we're headed, a majority minority country. And so to that end, I implored them to understand what we're trying to do on KBLA Talk 1580 in LA, and what others are trying to do across the country. I'm trying to build a black-owned talk radio network, the first of its kind, even beyond my station in LA into the future. That's my goal, that's my dream, because I see the way the country is changing. And so to be 33 on the list, on the one hand, is a beautiful thing. I celebrate that. I'm honored by it. On the other hand, it just reminds us there's so much more work to do to make our institutions in this country reflect the breadth and depth of diversity that is America in this multiracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural gumbo, if you will. There's a lot more work to do. And so we'll see where I am on the list next year. I mean, I don't do what I do to climb higher on a list, but I do want to challenge my colleagues in the talk radio world to expand their base, to put people on the radio that look like me and look like you, that can talk to bigger and broader audiences. We got something to say too. Our voices ought to be amplified as well. That's my challenge to the talk radio industry largely, but I'm honored to be sitting at 33.
Yeah, speaking of your show, I know you're going to be down at the DNC, August 19th through the 22nd, I believe. I read the press release that said you were offering your show free of charge.
Yeah.
To all urban stations across America. Did I get that correct?
Correct. So we'll be at the DNC in Chicago, Democratic National Convention, where Kamala will take the mantle and become the official. She's already the official nominee, but she will accept that nomination in Chicago. She and her running mate, Tim Walz, and off and running they will be. So we'll be there covering that convention live. It's another historic moment for Black America, and I wouldn't want to miss it. Just as I was in Denver, when Barack Obama accepted the nomination at that convention on the anniversary of King's I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington. It was a historic moment then. It will be historic for Kamala Harris in Chicago this time around, and I'm excited to be there. But because I recognize that there are urban stations serving Black people all across the country who may not have the resources to send a team of people to Chicago to cover the convention, I have offered any urban station in the country, no matter what your format is, gospel, R&B, pop, hip hop, talk, whatever your format is, if you're an urban station serving an urban audience, I've offered my program for that 1 week free to any station that wants to carry it. We're broadcasting live 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Chicago time. They can take the feed live, they can take it and run it tape delay, but I want to just make sure that we talk to as many people as we can, Black folk in that particular week, exposing them to what's happening in this historic moment in the great city of Chicago. So we offered the program to any urban station that wants to carry it at no charge, just for that 1 week. And I'm grateful to say that there are a lot of stations from New York to Florida to Texas and beyond who are signing up to carry our program in that 1 week. So again, just more stuff to be grateful for.
Absolutely. I'll close it out with a question from one of the VladTV members. At Yusuf Trowell asks, if you were to hold the State of the Black Union in 2024, who are a few of the Black influences that come to mind as potential invitees? And additionally, if you didn't participate as a moderator, who would you select for that role?
Well, the second question is much easier than the first. If I'm doing it, I'm moderating it. So that's easy. If I'm going to do the work to put it together, you better believe I'm going to moderate it. Although over the years, I did have other moderators, Charles Ogletree, I think Michelle Martin come to mind, other people who did moderate that on certain years when my hands were just kind of full. But I'm always happy to moderate those kind of conversations. We just had a big conversation for 3 hours recently on C-SPAN that I moderated. First time I've done that in a while. A dozen people, as I usually do, talking about climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience for the Black community. We are the disproportionate victims of these climate maladies, these climate catastrophes, but we're being left out of that conversation. So part of my work in witness was to pull together a national conversation around these climate issues that I moderated for 3 hours live on C-SPAN. You can go to the C-SPAN library and watch that if you so choose. It was an amazing conversation. The first time that America had seen a stage full of nothing but Black folk talking about climate. It was a major moment and a highlight of my career, and I enjoyed moderating that. So if I did it again, I'd like to moderate it. I enjoyed doing that. In terms of panelists, it's a good question. I'm not trying to escape the question or punt it. I really don't know. And I don't know because what made the symposium, what made SOBU, State of the Black Union, what it was, is that we were talking to persons in real time who were in fact influencers, thought leaders, and opinion makers. And so I haven't done that for some years now. So if we brought it back, I'd want to tap into that same vein. Who are those thought leaders, opinion makers, influencers in real time who I'd want to have on that stage? People like Wes Moore come to mind immediately, Governor of Maryland, very unique position that he holds right now. And I'm sure if I had time to think about it, there are others. But the point of those symposia were always to talk to folk in real time. I suspect there are some persons writing essays in this book. I'm thinking of Ashley Woodard Henderson, who has run the Highlander Center down in Tennessee, where Dr. King and Rosa Parks and so many others did such great work at that center historically over the years. I love this brilliant young sister named Ashley Woodard Henderson, who writes an essay in the new book, The Coming Up with Black America, 20 years later. I can see Ashley on that stage. There are others, and so I always get in trouble throwing names out, and I'm trying to think on the spot here. But again, the point is that you want to feature persons who in real time are critical voices, who have something to say to add to the dialogue. So I would do what I always do. I'd start doing my research and start working out a list, and we'd whittle it down to 12 people in the morning and to 12 folk in the afternoon, and we would do it as we've always done it, bringing the best and brightest voices to Black America. Not sure that's going to happen right about now with all the other things I have on my plate, but I appreciate the question.
Absolutely. It's always an honor and a pleasure to sit and have these conversations, to pick your brain, to get your thoughts. And it really is such a pleasure speaking to somebody who, when they say, I love my people, those are not just words. Those are not just words. Every fiber of your being, every bit of your work, it screams how much you love your people. And it's so inspiring, and it's always such a great time for me. So thank you so much for coming back to the platform. I would highly encourage everyone to go and pick up that book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, comes out August 27th. And it's available Amazon, any place you get your books. It's a fascinating read. It is more relevant today than it probably was 20 years ago when it was first published.
So, Prez, this is it. As you mentioned, it drops on August the 27th. But this is a labor of love for me. I had no idea 20 years ago when this book came out, it would go to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and no idea that 20 years later, I'd have the honor of compiling an edited and updated version. There's some amazing essays in this book written by some brilliant thought leaders, opinion makers, and there's a wonderful afterword in the book written by Nikki Giovanni. How honored am I that Nikki Giovanni, at my request, wrote an original poem at the end of this book. So the afterword is an original piece written by Nikki Giovanni. Bishop William Barber, who I think is one of America's greatest moral leaders, has picked up the torch on poverty that Dr. King, sadly, had to lay down. He writes the foreword to the book. Nikki Giovanni writes the afterword to the book. Marion Wright Edelman, founder of the Children's Defense Fund, is once again in this book. Cornel West is in this book. Mark Morial, head of the Urban League, is in this book. There's some great essayists in this book talking about the challenges our people face 20 years later. Again, it's on sale August 27th. You can pre-order right now wherever books are sold. But if you got the original book when it first came out and went to #1, you're certainly going to want to bookend it with this edition 20 years later. And I think you will not be disappointed when you get a chance to read what these brilliant essayists have to say. And as I said earlier, let's have a robust debate about it, a rich dialogue about where we go from here, as Dr. King might put it. But I was just honored to have the opportunity to put this book together 20 years later. And I think you'll be empowered by it.
So thank you. I love you, and keep up the great work that you're doing for our community.
I close prayers where I began. I was grateful for the invitation by VladTV to come back on. I said under one condition, I will do it, and that is that Shawn Prez has got to be the interlocutor. So I am grateful once again for your brilliant and thoughtful questions, always tough, but always fair. You always give me a chance to express myself. For that, I am grateful, and I leave you with the words of the late, great Benjamin Elijah Mays, who taught Dr. King when he was a student at Morehouse. I have only but a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it, just a tiny little minute, but all of eternity is in it. All I'm trying to do is to use the minute I've been given to try to make a difference in the world, and particularly on behalf of my people, and you are doing the same thing. And so for that, I am honored once again to have been in dialogue with you. I love you, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
We'll end it there. Peace and blessings, my brother.